Disability Inclusive Climate Justice. What's the impact?
Look at floods. According to the impact and what is happening now in rain patterning, when it rains sometimes and the flood comes, people can run away, but a person with disability with wheelchair can be left and swept away by the water. So that's why we need also to be included so that we give our issues and we give our views.
Maintenant, en termes de changement climatique, la sécheresse fait que le village se transporte à Bamako. J'ai des exemples précis. Par exemple, mon père, il est le chef de village de notre village. Autrefois, c'est le village qui nous apportait du riz, du mil, des fruits sauvages. Mais actuellement, c'est nous qui cotisons ici, en ville, à la famille, pour envoyer au village. Donc, cela prouve que la situation est critique. Et l'exode rural ne concerne pas les personnes handicapées. On ne peut pas aller à l'aventure comme le disent les autres. Nous sommes obligés de rester au village. Et souvent, tu vois des villages, il n'y a que des femmes, des enfants et des personnes handicapées. Tous les jeunes du village non handicapés sont partis. Donc, ça aggrave non seulement notre isolement, mais encore la pauvreté. Et beaucoup se disent, les personnes handicapées n'ont pas de terre, elles ne cultivent pas, en quoi cela les concerne? Mais en cas de famine, nous sommes les plus concernés. En cas de catastrophe naturelle, nous sommes les plus concernés. Donc vraiment, il est important que nous sachions amener les autres à comprendre quel est l'impact du changement climatique sur les personnes handicapées et combien cela peut nous rendre encore plus vulnérables, plus pauvres, plus marginalisés.
In most situations, camps to host refugees or internally displaced people are not designed accessible and are not managed in accessible and inclusive way for people with disabilities. So what we have been hearing from partners and people with disabilities on the ground is that if they manage to actually arrive to a refugee camp or internally displaced people's camp, they find extra barriers, for example, to using wash, sanitation and hygiene services because they're not accessible.
Persons with disabilities are experts themselves.
The issues and concerns of persons with disabilities, including indigenous people with disabilities, the issue of accessibility, the issue of meaningful participation and engagement of those people in different decision makings that impacts their daily lives are very crucial things. So we have CSOs that those have been working on climate change, but we need organization of persons with disabilities because they know and they have the lived experience what need to be integrated from a disability perspective.
I think because many people, especially the ones who are working in ministries and other groups, they only listen that there's a bad impact of climate change in the lives of persons with disability, but they don't live themselves what is the impact. But persons with disability, especially persons who are living also in the rural areas or indigenous communities, they really know, they have a really deep knowledge about how they can survive despite of this kind of negative impact of climate change. And they have experienced a life experience that definitely we need to introduce, we need to present to the government and other stakeholders.
You know, hardly persons with disabilities are sort of reflected in any policies or any documents, strategies, national action plans on climate change here in the Pacific. And I guess that made us really want to do a study of this, to involve persons with disabilities.
We have successfully done work around urbanization and low carbon transports to make sure that disabled people and our rights are included in what the government is thinking about implementing moving forward. And we did that with one of the first partnerships of climate organizations and disabled people's organizations calling for a review on how our streets and how people move around our streets are managed. So that's some really important work we've been doing domestically.
Barriers to participation.
I'm not sure if it's a knowledge shortage or if it's a lack of opportunity, but there needs to be more disability leadership on the ground.
Even in our organization, there is not enough people working in this area because of priorities in our personal life.
No, there's not enough time in the day. There's not enough resources. We're always threatened by funding and funding cuts, funding budgets, and even if we're a charity or even if we got government funding, still we have to tick all the boxes and jump through all the hoops to get to what we want to do.
As a journalist, you're at the mercy of editors making the decisions about whether they think disability, climate change, and migration is the important story of the day. And sadly, they're really, really struggling to see that right now.
As I've already mentioned, that people with disabilities are diverse. So the diverse need of people with disabilities cannot be addressed by the CSOs working on the climate change, because disability in itself is a very complex issue, and the needs of person with disabilities varies from one individual to another individual, not only in terms of impairment, but also the different social categories like gender, ethnicity, geography, social and geographical conditions. All these impact a person with disabilities, and all those things cannot be framed in a single box of marginalized groups.
And also the mindset where we are still, we have that the mindset of having persons with a disability as persons that need to be cared about, that cared for, or persons that need support all the time, without having look at the ability. So that's the normal norm here, and not realizing that persons with disabilities can also be actors, in any climate action.
Because accessibility is not something you can add on to program implementation, but it has to be embedded throughout everything we do. And specifically when it comes to resilience.
Les activités par rapport que ce soit les séminaires, les ateliers qui portent sur le changement climatique, les personnes handicapées, on n'est pas invité, on n'est pas convié. Et quand on veut participer, on nous dit que ça ne nous concerne pas et qu'il y aura d'autres réunions qui vont nous concerner.
I've never been invited by any climate organization, but it is my passion to become an activist on climate change, so I involve myself in those problems because I have a passion for it.
A key barrier for me, along with other people with disabilities at the beginning, was the ableism that we faced. A lot of the climate movement still today thinks that disabled people don't have anything to offer.
The way forward.
I think first it would be better to have a coalition, not only with persons with disabilities, but also with other NGOs and other stakeholders, in order to work together in a collaborative effort to do things about mitigating the impact of climate change in all people.
Avec mon association, le 3 décembre, Journée internationale des personnes handicapées, on essaie de faire des activités pour attirer l'attention. On cible une école où on ramasse avec l'association et les élèves les papiers plastiques, les sachets en plastique pour nettoyer l'école. Mais malheureusement, on n'a pas eu l'aval et l'accompagnement de la mairie, parce que quand on fait la collecte des sachets plastiques, on ne sait pas où les mettre. Ça nous reste sous les bras, parce que personne ne vient récupérer après. On est obligé de chercher encore des moyens pour que quelqu'un puisse venir prendre ces déchets. Mais au moins, ça nous permet de sensibiliser les étudiants ou les élèves du côté néfaste des sachets plastiques et du danger que les sachets plastiques peuvent causer à l'environnement.
I just say I'm doing things to help the environment, like just I use public transport, and mainly I eat less meat, and then I don't use anything but plastic, so mainly I just recycle them.
Every day we hear about new policies to reduce carbon emissions. The reality is that if these policies and programs are designed based on consultation with people with disabilities and their representative organizations, they can be actually wonderful opportunities, not only to address the climate crisis, but also to enhance inclusion of people with disabilities, to enhance accessibility.
The study, as you've said, it's a positive step to the right direction, where we involve persons with disabilities first as resource persons, providing that support, mainstreaming disability issues in their own national forums, and at the same time involving them in the field study as well as the literature review.
A space of learning and to exchange knowledge so we can support each other in this space. Part of what we haven't had for so long is that support in the climate movement.
Governments have focal points who work on climate and environment, but these focal points are hardly reaching to disability focal points. So if I could change something at national levels, for example, that would be dialogue between disability focal points and climate action focal points.
Our future awaits.
People with disabilities need to be listened to, full stop. The conversations around climate change aren't including people with disability, despite the fact that we make up 20% of the global population. We need to find solutions, we need to find ideas, we need to thrive as a global community, but we can't do that unless people with disabilities are being included in every single conversation, in risk assessments, in trend forecasting. If we're discussing how we're going to live in a world which is constantly changing due to climate change, at least 20% of that conversation needs to be made up by and from people with disabilities.
Everybody else in the world, including people with learning disabilities, should be included in climate change. Can you put it in plain language, or maybe in the easy read, or maybe talking to them face to face?
For me, it's a more practical approach of having disabled people in leadership roles. So disabled people coming and teaching other disabled people how to react, not react, but in an emergency. So I think there's a really big area that is missing in the disaster education space.
We bring our stories, and I think that has to be counted. Our personal stories, our lived experiences, and we need to be heard.
People with disability need financial support to advocate about climate change in the communities where they live.
To really ensure that organizational persons with disabilities have a seat at the table when local action plans or mitigation measures are put into action, but also in the global dialogue on the discourse of climate change.
We need now to approach the new tactics of involving everybody, because all of us in the whole world, we are affected by climate change.
The most important things that need to be changed is for the duty bearer to make sure that there is participation of the people that they are targeting, you know. So they have to make sure that there is a meaningful participation and that they listen to the people.
Change, if we are not going to act now, if we are not going to act now at the moment, then things might not be, we will be too late to bring these all issues involved.
This video was produced by European Disability Forum and CBM Global Disability Inclusion for the use of organisations of persons with disabilities and other stakeholders in their advocacy towards achieving climate justice for everyone. Please share. With thanks in alphabetical order to Abner Manlapas from the Philippines, Betty Kiyomahendo Kiyogabirwe from Uganda, Elham Yousefian from the USA, Firiel Aljube from the UK, Hannes Yulin Lagrelius from Sweden, Holly Ann Brooks from the UK, Jason Boberg from New Zealand, Jordan Milroy from Samoa and New Zealand, Manasi Ntutu from Kenya, Pratima Gurung from Nepal, Rokiatu Rose Diakite from Mali, Rosario Galarza from Peru, and Sainemili Tawaki from Fiji.